The Graveyard Dare. Not all stories begin once upon a time, and not all stories happened a long time ago. In fact, this one happened quite recently. It was Halloween night, and a group of young people, dressed in their costumes, had gathered for a party. As usually is the case, they had begun to tell stories designed to scare one another. Eventually, the talk came around to the fear that each of them had felt in passing the graveyard on their way to the party. One of the young men said, "You have to make sure that you don't ever stand on a grave at midnight, because if you do, the body will reach up and grab you and pull you down inside." Now, one girl, dressed as a princess in a long flowing dress that went all the way down to the floor, said, "Don't be silly. I don't believe in ghosts. I've never seen a ghost, and I wouldn't be afraid to go into the graveyard at midnight and stand on a grave. That's silly superstition." The young man was quite upset that the girl didn't believe what he'd said, and so he dared the young girl, whose name was Trish, to prove this very night that she wasn't afraid to go to the graveyard and at midnight to stand on a grave. As the time was growing late, a group soon left and made their way down toward the graveyard. Before they left, Trish put on her long cloak that was part of her costume, and they worked their way down the street toward the cemetery. As they reached the gate, one of the boys handed Trish a fork from the kitchen. "Here, take this, and when you've stood on the grave, stick it into the ground so that we'll be able to see, and we'll have proof that you did stand on the grave at midnight." Trish left the group at the gate and went inside. In the darkness, for the first time, she began to feel a little bit afraid. "Wasn't that a movement?" she caught out of the corner of her eye. She almost broke then and ran outside, but she was determined to see this through. She walked forward until she found a grave. She stood on the grave. She raised the fork, ready to plunge it into the ground, when she was certain that she heard a noise behind her. First a sigh, and then a loud moan. And it came from a grave not far away. Now she was sure that she could hear something approaching, moving stiffly and wetly through the darkness. She was too frightened to scream. She plunged the fork into the ground and turned to run, but she was unable. Something had caught hold of her, and she struggled and struggled to gain her freedom. But the more she struggled, the tighter it held her, and now it was tugging at her throat. With a final spasm of terror, she threw herself forward onto the ground, only to feel herself being dragged backward toward the grave. And then there was only blackness. Trish's friends waited outside the gate, and when Trish had not come back in half an hour, they decided that they'd better go in and look for her. Armed with a flashlight, they went into the cemetery, and there was Trish, lying on the grave. But when they touched her and lifted her up, they realized that she had only fainted. The end of her cloak was embedded in the ground, held fast in place by the fork that she had plunged into the grave. Trish wasn't as brave as she had thought herself to be.
Oh, I get it. It was just a fork stuck through her dress that held her on the ground.
The Ghost with one black eye. It was a dark and stormy Halloween night. Brother and sister had been out collecting all their candy, and now they were back in their house, counting it, seeing who got the best chocolate bars, who got the most chips, and who could they give those suckers away to, when all of a sudden they heard their baby sister cry.
Wah! I'm thirsty. Someone get me some apple juice now! Now!
"Oh," said sister, "I'll get you some apple juice." And she went to go to the fridge when her mother said, "Oh dear, there's no apple juice left in the fridge. You'll need to go down to the basement to get the apple juice." So sister went over to the basement door. She opened it up and went down the stairs. When she got to the bottom of the stairs, she heard a voice. "I am the ghost with the one black eye." And sister screamed and she ran up the stairs as quickly as she could. And she slammed the door and she looked at the baby and she said, "Oh, baby, I don't think you really want apple juice today, do you? You see, there's a ghost in the basement." "Oh," said brother, "I don't believe in ghosts. Don't worry, baby. I can get you some apple juice in the basement." And the baby started to cry and she said,
I want some apple juice now! Now!
So brother went over to the basement. He opened up the door and he went down the stairs. And when he got to the bottom of the stairs, he heard a voice that said, "I am the ghost with the one black eye." And brother gave out a great yell and he turned and hightailed it up those stairs so quickly, and he slammed that basement door and he looked at baby and he said, "Baby, don't you think you'd like some orange juice today?" And baby just looked at him and she started to cry.
I want some apple juice now! Now! Now!
"Oh," said mother, "I guess I'll have to go. Why is it I always have to do everything myself?" And so the mother walked over to the basement door. She opened it up, and down she went to the bottom of the basement stairs. And when she got to the very bottom, she heard a voice that said, "I am the ghost with the one black eye." And the mother gave a terrible screech and she ran up to the top of the basement stairs and slammed the door shut and she said, "Baby, there really is a ghost in our basement." And just about this time, the father walked into the kitchen to hear his little baby sitting there crying,
Wah! I want some apple juice now! 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 Wah!
And the father said, "Won't anybody get the baby some apple juice?" And the mother said, "But the apple juice is in the basement, and there's a ghost in our basement." And the father said, "I don't believe in ghosts." And he walked across the kitchen over to the basement door. He opened it up and he went down the basement stairs. And when he got to the bottom of the basement stairs, he heard a voice that said, "I am am the ghost with the one black eye. And the father, he didn't say a thing. In fact, he didn't even breathe, and he ran all the way to the top of the stairs, and he slammed that basement door, and he looked at Baby, and he said, "Baby, how about tomorrow? I take you to the grocery store, and I'll buy you some apple juice. I'll buy you as much apple juice as you've ever wanted." And Baby looked at him, and then she started to cry.
I want my apple juice! I want my apple juice now!
And then up came the old black dog. He had been curled under the kitchen table, sleeping quite contentedly. And he thought to himself, if no one else is going to get Baby that apple juice, I guess I'll have to. And he went over to the basement door. He stretched up as tall as he could. He put his big black paws around that doorknob and he pulled open the basement door. And then he went down the basement steps. And when he got to the bottom of the basement steps, he heard a voice that said, "I am the ghost with the one black eye." And that dog hightailed it up the stairs with his tail stuck between his legs, and he slammed that basement door shut. He didn't say a thing to Baby. He just went over to that table and he curled up underneath that table and he lay there shaken and shivering. And then the little orange kitten thought, well, if no one else is going to keep Baby happy, I'm going to have to go and do the job. And so the little kitten went over and she sat at the basement door. And she sat and she waited until someone opened the door for her. And then she went down the basement stairs. When she got to the bottom of the basement stairs, she heard a voice that said, "I am the ghost with the one black eye." And that kitten, she turned around and she got to the top of the stairs without touching one of those stairs. And she ran underneath the kitchen table and she curled up there with that little dog and she sat there shivering and shaking. And Baby sat there and she said out loud, "I want my apple juice now." But there was nobody left in the house to get her apple juice. So Baby climbed up out of that high chair, right on top of the tray of the high chair, and then she crawled over the tray and slid down the leg of her high chair. She crawled across the kitchen floor. She opened that door, and then she turned around. With her feet sticking down the basement, she slid all the way down the stairs on her stomach. And when she got to the bottom of the basement stairs, she heard a voice that said, "I am the ghost with the one black eye." And that little baby, she sat up tall on her bum and she said,
If you don't be quiet and leave us alone, you're going to be the ghost with 2 black eyes.
And with that, the ghost flew off and he was never seen or heard from again.
It was a dark and cold night. Show me how cold it is. Oh, show me how cold. It's real cold. And all of a sudden it got real hot. Oh, show me how hot. Oh, show me how hot. And then the wind started to blow. Let's see that wind blow. But most of all it was real cold. Show me how cold. Come on, it's cold. And it was very quiet. It was real quiet. It was so quiet. It was spooky. It was spooky. Yeah, spooky. Then all of a sudden, there was some strange sounds. Let's hear some strange sounds. Oh! Then it got real quiet again. Real quiet. Then all of a sudden, there were some very ugly and mean-looking monsters. Let me see a monster face. Trying to see a monster face. That's it. Now these monsters had claws, so get your hands in front of you. That's it. Now make your hands like claws, and first move your left hand, then your right, then your left. Keep going. Right. All right. Everybody do the monster walk. Everybody do the monster walk. Everybody do the monster walk. Well, yeah. Well, you better run and hide. Here comes Frankenstein, so big and so wide. He's gonna
tear you apart.
You better run and hide, run and hide. Oh, everybody do the monster walk. Everybody do the monster walk. Everybody do the monster walk. Well, yeah. Well, you better run and hide. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Here comes Dracula. He's flying way up high. He's gonna You better run and hide and do the monster walk. Everybody do the monster walk. Everybody do the monster walk. Well, yeah. Well, you better run and hide. Here comes the wolf man, so furry and so wild. Let's hear that wolf man cry now. Oh, he's gonna
Get you tonight.
You better run, 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 run. Come and hide and do the monster walk. Everybody do the monster walk. Everybody do the monster walk. And do the monster walk. 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 You better run and hide.
The Slithery Dee. The Slithery Dee, he came out of the sea. He ate all the others, but he didn't eat me. The Slithery Dee, he came out of the sea. He ate all the others, but he didn't eat me. The Slithery Dee, he came out of the sea. He ate all the others, but he didn't eat.
My imagination. What's that monster doing crawling in my bedroom door? Or is it just my shirt and pants lying on the floor? I wish it wasn't quite so dark. I wish that Mum were near. I wish I wasn't quite so scared. I hope that morning's almost here. It's only my imagination playing tricks on me, I know. My imagination playing tricks on me, and so I'll pull the covers round my head and snuggle up real tight, and soon it will be morning once again. What's that eerie scratching sound underneath my bed? Did I really hear it, or was it only in my head? I wish that I was still asleep. I wish this was a dream, 'cause if I hear that noise again, I think I'm going to scream. It's only my imagination playing tricks on me, I know. My imagination playing tricks on me, and so I'll pull the covers round my head and snuggle up real tight, and soon it will be morning once again. What's that ghostly spectre I see standing over there? Or is it just a shadow that's giving me a scare? I wish that all these spooky things would just leave me alone. Why can't they all just go away and find some other home? It's only my imagination playing tricks on me, I know. My imagination playing tricks on me, and so I'll pull the covers round my head and snuggle up real tight, and soon it will be morning once again. Pirate Captain John. Gather round, kiddies, and let me tell you all a scary tale about a pirate, Captain John, who on the 7 seas did sail. He had a beard so long and black, he was a scary sight, and a parrot on his shoulder who stayed there day and night. Treasures, gold and silver, he would steal from far and near, and men and boys would shake with fright when his booming voice they'd hear. Shiver me timbers, you landlubbers, and all of you be gone, for you don't want to be around to see Pirate Captain John. Har, har, har. And there were stories through the world of all the ships he sank, and if he found some boy or girl, he made them walk the plank. Then one day, a brave young lad on an island far away did not run from Captain John when he heard the pirate say, Shiver me timbers, you landlubbers, and all of you be gone, for you don't want to be around to see the pirate Captain John. Har, har, har. Instead, this boy, who, by the way, had a magic spell of his own, called out, Abracadabra, abracadabra, and that pirate turned to stone. And now there stands a statue, though the pirate is long gone. Still, some say, on a dark, dark night, they hear the ghost of Captain John. Shiver me timbers, you landlubbers, and all of you be gone, for you don't want to be around to see Pirate Captain John. Ha 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 ha.
Nobody loves a pirate
a mean and pesky pirate, a down and dirty, really, really dirty, down and dirty pirate like me.
A down and dirty pirate like me.
I've been sailing the 7 seas, and many have seen my wrath. Ha ha! I've been so busy being mean, I haven't had time to take a bath.
P.U. Nobody loves a pirate.
Ha ha!
A mean and pesky pirate.
I'm gonna get you, kids.
Down and dirty.
Really, really dirty, down and dirty pirate like me.
A down and dirty pirate like me.
Har har! Shiver me timbers, landlubbers! Har 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 har! Stop the Coffin. A long time ago, there was a country boy who decided to visit the town to see all of the sights that it had to offer. Now, he had no money in his pockets, so he couldn't afford a room at the hotel. He looked around for a place where he might spend the night undisturbed, and at last he chose to sleep in the cemetery. He curled up behind one of the headstones and drifted off to sleep. But in the middle of the night, he was awakened by something bumping against his foot. He sat up and looked, and there was an enormous mahogany coffin. He backed up a little bit, but the coffin grew closer. He backed up even more, and the coffin grew closer still. Terrified, he jumped to his feet and began to run, and the coffin floated into the air and followed him. He ran out through the gate of the cemetery, and the coffin followed along behind him. He ran through the flower beds and tore up the flowers, and the coffin followed behind him. He ran down the street and through a chicken yard and scared all of the chickens, and the coffin followed along and scared all the chickens as well. He ran through the park and he knocked over a picnic table, and the coffin followed, and it knocked over a picnic table too. He ran into the stable and terrified the horses, and the coffin floated through the stable and terrified the horses as well. And now he was in the middle of the town, and he ran into a grocery store, and the coffin followed into the grocery store. The young fellow ran down the aisles, knocking things off the shelves, and the coffin followed along, knocking things off the shelves as well. Finally, he went into the back room, and he broke through a window and jumped outside. And the coffin broke another window and followed him outside. At last, he ran into a drugstore, and the coffin followed him inside. And the boy grabbed a box from the shelf. And that was where it all ended. He tore open the box and pulled out some cough drops. He quickly ate some, and that stopped the coffin.
The Gunny Wolf, a tale from Africa. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, there lived a mother and her little girl, and they lived right by the edge of the jungle. Every day, the mother would get up and she would make her little girl some breakfast. And then she would turn to her little girl and she would say, "Little girl, don't ever, ever go into the jungle." And every day, little girl would look at her mother and she'd say, "Mama, I would never, ever go into the jungle." One day, the mother got up and she needed to go and visit a friend that day, so she made breakfast just as she always did. And then she looked at her little girl and she said, "I must be on my way now, but remember, little girl, don't ever, ever go into the jungle." And little girl looked at her mother and she said, "Mama, I would never, ever go into the jungle." And little girl stood there and she watched as her mother walked down the road and around the bend. And just as she went around the bend in the road, the little girl turned around to go back into the house. And as she was turning around, she noticed, just out of the corner of her eye, the most beautiful little white flowers that she had ever seen. And they were just at the edge of the jungle. And little girl, she forgot everything that her mother had ever told her. And she walked over to the edge of the jungle. And she began to pick the flowers. And as she picked them, she sang this song.
Kumquat, kiwa, kumquat, kiwa.
And when she had picked all of the white flowers, she turned around to go back into her house. But then, just out of the corner of her other eye, little girl saw the most beautiful purple flowers she had ever seen. And they were just a little ways into the jungle. And little girl forgot everything that her mother had ever told her, and she walked right into the jungle. And then she started to pick the flowers. And as she picked them, she sang,
Kumquat, kiwa, kumquat, kiwa.
And when she was done picking all the flowers, she had the most beautiful bouquet full of white and purple flowers, and she thought, "Oh, my mother will love these flowers when she sees them." And she turned around to go back to her home. But just before she got turned all the way around, she saw the most beautiful, amazing, big, gigantic orange flowers that she had ever seen, and she knew she just had to have them. And there they were, right in the middle of the jungle. And little girl, she forgot everything that her mother had ever told her. And she walked straight into the middle of the jungle. And she started to pick the orange flowers. And as she picked them, she sang,
Kumquat, kiwa, kumquat, kiwa.
And she had the most amazing bouquet of flowers. She had white ones and purple ones and big, gigantic orange ones. And then she stood up, and there stood the Gunny Wolf. And the Gunny Wolf looked at her and said, "Little girl, sing me that gootin' sweetin' song again." And the little girl, very, very nervously, she began to sing.
Kum kwa kiwa. Kum kwa kiwa.
And as she sang, that old Gunny Wolf, his eyes, they started to close. And his big old head, it started to nod. And he fell asleep. And little girl, she started to run. Pitty-pat, 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 pitty-pat. And then the Gunny Wolf, he woke up and he started to run. Hunker-cha, 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 hunker-cha. And when he caught up to little girl, he said, "Little girl, why for you move?" And little girl said, "Who, me? Why, I no move." And the old Gunny Wolf, he said, "Then sing me that gootin' sweetin' song again." And so, little girl, she started to sing.
Kum kwa kiwa. Kum kwa kiwa.
And as she sang, that old Gunny Wolf, his head began to nod. And his eyes, they closed. And then he began to snore. Well, little girl, she started to run. Pitty-pat, 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 pitty-pat. And then the old Gunny Wolf, he woke up and he started to run. Hunker-cha, 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 hunker-cha. And when he caught up to little girl, he said, "Little girl, why for you move?" And little girl, she said, "Who, me? I no move." And the old Gunny Wolf, he said, "Then sing me that gootin' sweetin' song again." And so the little girl, she started to sing.
Kum kwa kiwa. Kum kwa kiwa.
And as she sang, the old Gunny Wolf, he started to fall asleep. His head began to nod. His eyes, they closed tight. He started to snore. And then he fell against an old tree. He slid right down to the ground and curled up into a little ball. And little girl, she started to run. Pitty-pat, 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 right to the edge of the jungle. And the old Gunny Wolf, he woke up. Hunker-cha, hunker-cha, hunker-cha. And little girl, she kept running. Pitty-pat, 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 right to the front gate of her house. And that old Gunny Wolf, he kept running too. Hunker-cha, hunker-cha, hunker-cha. Pitty-pat, pitty-pat, pitty-pat. The little girl ran right into her house and slammed that door tight. And little girl, well, little girl knew that if she ever went into the jungle again, that she was always smarter and a lot quicker than that old Gunny Wolf.
When things go bump, bump, bump in the night. I hear a noise under my bed. When things go bump, 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 in the night I jump, 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 in fright. Bump, 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 in the night I jump, 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 in fright. La, 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 la. Ooh. La, 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 la. Ooh.
When I see a shadow